Good morning and welcome to the Apprenticeship Texas Conference Session 1. I'm Desi Holmes, the Apprenticeship Director of the Texas Workforce Commission, and will be the Master of Ceremonies today. Before we get started, chat during the session is disabled, but you can place questions and answers in the Q&A box. Some questions might be responded to in the Q&A during the session. All questions will be in the Q&A document. After the webinar, send additional questions and/or comments to apprenticeshiptexas@twc.texas.gov. We will post the webinar recording, PowerPoint slides, and Q&A document to this website. Additionally, we'll include the entire bios of all the presenters. I want to give you a short preview of this session. As you can see from the event overview, we have an action-packed agenda on apprenticeship for you today. In this session, you will hear from Commissioner Alvarez and myself on updates in Texas, and then Dudley Light with Department of Labor, what's happening at the federal level. Then you will hear from Workforce Solutions Gulf Coast with 2 registered apprenticeship programs, Bright Offerings and Campfire, sharing their perspective on the value of apprenticeship. Additionally, you will hear from Reagan Miller, Director of Child Care and Early Learning Division at the Texas Workforce Commission, with great news about apprenticeship and childcare. Again, I want to thank you for joining us today for this session. Now let's get started. I take great pleasure in introducing our opening speaker, Julian Alvarez III, who is the Commissioner representing labor for the Texas Workforce Commission. He was appointed to this position in 2016 by Governor Abbott and immediately became a leader in the expansion of apprenticeship throughout Texas and sometimes the nation. Commissioner Alvarez continues to travel the state in support of apprenticeship. Just yesterday, he was in McAllen, Texas at a graduation of veterans from 5x5 Brewery, a picture that you'll see here, and I'm sure he'll tell you more details about it. And this program is supported by South Texas College. Commissioner Alvarez, I am sure, will give you the details. This is going to be about the first 2 apprentices graduating from this professional brewer, non-traditional registered apprenticeship training program. Now, please help me welcome a champion of apprenticeship, Commissioner Alvarez.
Thank you, Desi, for the introduction. Good morning to everyone. I'm so sorry that we couldn't be in person. I know we had planned to have this conference in person here in, actually we were thinking about doing it in McAllen, but I'm so glad that we still went forward to hosting this great event, this conference for all of you. As Desi referenced earlier, I'm in McAllen, Texas, where yesterday we were honored to actually have something first of its kind, if I'm not mistaken, and that was a brewmaster type of apprenticeship program through South Texas College. And so excited to be a part of that and a history. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the great work that Desi Holmes and her team have done to expand the apprenticeship training model. You know, when I was younger, I used to think of apprentices being the plumbers, construction, electrical folks, and there's nothing, and that was the traditional apprentices growing up. But God, just in the last 4 or 5 years, you know, while I've been working closely with Desi, being able to see apprenticeship programs expand because of people like you that want to learn more about how apprenticeship model may help them in their business, whether it's a small or large business. I mean, think about some of the things that have happened even during the pandemic, how we've been able to expand apprenticeship throughout the state of Texas. We have great people like Dudley Light that will be joining us. And of course, people like Crosby, who will be part of today's discussion, and other panelists and speakers that will talk about how apprenticeship fits and maybe your model there with your business or your school. You're going to hear a lot of terms like apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship programs. You might even hear things like career and technology education, CTE. All of these are excellent training tools, and you'll see how all of them play an important role in training our future workforce. Look, I'm here in McAllen now talking about yesterday about Brewmaster, and today I'm talking to folks that are bringing drones to the Valley and how they can incorporate some type of apprenticeship program. And just yesterday, Desi and I were speaking to the folks down here about providing a special apprenticeship model or training for individuals that are transitioning out of foster care. One of the things that I have to compliment not only Desi, but other members of our agency, whether it's through adult education and literacy, whether it's through vocational rehabilitation, the fact that we're looking at ways that we can blend services. And so I'm so grateful to be working for such a great agency that's been able to actually implement and expand the apprenticeship training model. You know, I'm so proud of the agency. I'm so proud of people like Desi and Ann and Tara and other folks that work for us and all the great work that they've done to go out there and market apprenticeship. If I'm not mistaken, you know, Desi's working on these apprenticeship kind of counselor positions that she's going to be putting out there, navigators. Who else is doing that? I mean, who else has got folks around the state embedded and working closely with our 28 workforce boards to make sure that we succeed when it comes to putting an apprenticeship program together, or even educating folks on what apprenticeship programs are? Look, I don't know, the experts in Austin know whether we're leading the state in apprenticeship programs, but I will tell you this, the programs that we have put in place here in Texas have not only been successful, but we've exceeded any dreams that we ever had about the way we were going to move forward on training individuals that were interested in apprenticeship programs. And please understand, and you'll probably hear this later, that apprentices are college students. And many of them, like the two individuals that graduated yesterday, are entrepreneurs. So that is so cool. And then next week, we're going to talk about what we recently did in Texas, and Dudley was a big part of this, and that is that we now have childcare services. Those individuals that work in our childcare providers are now going through an apprenticeship program. So they came up with the idea. It was a request by an employer. And I guess I threw that in there because all you have to do is ask, and we'll do our very best to see what we can do to make sure that we have a program that fits perfect for your training needs. So Desi, thank you for all the work you've done. I'm so excited to see all the hundreds of people that are on today and that are interested in not only putting together maybe a program, but individuals that may be open to the idea of trying an apprenticeship program there, either in their schools, their counties, their cities, local EDCs that are on board. So again, thanks to all of you that are participating. We're going to be full of 2 days of all types of opportunities that are out there for you. Wish we were there in person. I mean, as you know, many of you that know me know that I'm an exciting person. I like to be there in person. I want to hug you. I want to be able to touch and just let you know how excited I am about all the great things that this great state of ours is doing. So remember, there are many things that the apprenticeship program offers. Please feel free to ask questions, like some of the things that they've done, like creating an opportunity for bridges so that individuals that graduate from apprenticeship programs can receive college credit at some of the finest community colleges in the state. Again, I'm rambling on because I know there's just so many things I could talk about. But again, I know you're going to have 2 full days of exciting information regarding apprenticeship programs. Please feel free to ask Desi and her team. And if there's anything I can ever do for you here at the agency, please feel free to reach out to myself or Jeanette De La Cruz. Desi, enjoy the rest of the conference, and I look forward to seeing all of you in person someday.
Thank you, Commissioner Alvarez, for your leadership. Your comments always give inspiration and motivation to the guests and staff. So thank you for being willing to kick off our session and our apprenticeship conference for today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Now, I want to introduce another individual that leads Texas in the expansion of apprenticeship, Dudley Light with Department of Labor, Region 4 Director, which has responsibility to oversee registered apprenticeship in 11 states, including Texas. But we're growing so big, he spends most of his time on Texas. He brings 50 years of experience with apprenticeship and always willing to share his expertise. Now, can we please welcome Dudley Light, another person that's a leader in apprenticeship in Texas.
Thank you, Desi. First and foremost, I want to say thanks for having me today. And I want to start off basically talking about where we are nationally. We have continued to grow the overall apprenticeship system, even during the current COVID environment. And currently we have over 623,550 active apprentices. That's nationwide. Here in our region, as you said, we have 11 states, 52,000 active apprentices, with just a little over 22,000 active apprentices here in Texas. When I say active, that's today. That's how many people are in the system actively going through a program today. We've also grown here in Texas to over 600 registered programs. So that's significant. Our average program is over 35 apprentices, with our larger programs having well over 100, some even up and higher than that. We are seeing growth in both the healthcare field and the IT field, as well as in advanced manufacturing. Texas apprentices represents about 43% of all the active apprentices within our region. We are currently completing over 18,000 apprentices in the region. In order to grow the number of active apprentices with 18,000 completing every year, we have to add 18,001 new apprentices to have a +1. It's kind of like filling a bucket with water with holes in it. So it takes time to grow. That being said, the growth in the number of active apprentices was accomplished by not only my staff, but also the staff here at the Office of Apprenticeship, but also by the work of the Apprenticeship Texas staff and our local workforce boards who are working with us. So if anyone is asking why is Texas still getting new grants from the DOL for expanding and growing the apprenticeship system, it's because it is a cost-effective and a proven track history. Considering that the last round of grants that was awarded in June, it was no surprise that Texas received the largest amount of funds it was given to any state. That speaks very highly of our combined efforts to grow apprenticeship within the state. I also want to remind everyone that the last round of grants was actually out of our FY20 funding, and we will be awarding FY21 funding probably around March, April, May, June of next year. So our FY21 funding gets put out in 22. The amount of funds will also be increased. I believe it's going to be $185,000 this time, $185 million this time. So if you're not working with Apprenticeship Texas, I'd recommend you pay attention to the announcements and funding opportunities that TWC puts out and join in our overall efforts to provide high-paying, quality apprenticeship opportunities to our fellow Texans. I also want to make everyone aware of the dates of the National Apprenticeship Week, which this year will be the week of November 15th through the 20th. This is the week in November that follows the week in Veterans Day. So whatever week Veterans Day is in, the next week will be the National Apprenticeship Week. I'm also proud to kind of announce that finally we're getting these dates ahead of time. So for the next 3 years, it will be the same week, that week following the National Apprenticeship Week. So that's a big plus. So our programs and our sponsors will be able to provide better opportunities to promote their programs. And if I can go back to the information on funding for just a minute. Legislation is working its way through Congress, and once passed, in whatever form it is passed in, we do expect a large increase in available funding for registered apprenticeship programs. So stay tuned. Once again, stay in touch with TWC. Keep working with Desi's team there at Apprenticeship Texas, and of course our team here. So Desi, that's kind of it on the national scale. So back to you.
Thank you, Dudley. I'm sure our audience enjoyed your updates and can see the continued growth in Texas apprenticeship numbers. Thank you for your team working so closely with our team. We're going to continue to grow. Next, I would like to take a few minutes to update with regards to what's happening at Texas Workforce Commission Office of Apprenticeship. July 1st, as Dudley mentioned, Texas Workforce Commission received the State Apprenticeship Expansion Equity and Innovations Grant from DOL, $10 million, a huge amount for Texas, to continue the expansion of registered apprenticeship in Texas. This brings the Texas total to approximately $28 million since the first planning grant in late 2016. Apprenticeship expansion funding at work from now until June 2025 will produce at least 8,900 registered apprentices, approximately 103 new registered apprenticeship programs, and 1,400 pre-apprentices with pathways directly into registered apprenticeship training programs. Texas Workforce Commission always takes their commitment to DOL seriously. In our last grant that we closed out in April 2021, the Texas commitment was 1,902 apprentices. Texas Workforce Commission actually produced 2,948 apprentices, and an additional 1,046 more apprentices than originally contracted for. So yet again, as many times before, Texas is an overachiever. As you know, Texas Workforce Commission has 3 commissioners: Brian Daniel, Chairman and Commissioner representing the public; Juliana Alvarez III, Commissioner representing labor, whom we just heard from; Aaron Demerson, Commissioner representing employers. So when I say commission, I'm referring to these 3 individuals. The commission continues to support registered apprenticeship, a funding initiative directed at a specific industry, information and technology. The requests for applications were released and 6 awards were made, and contracts were effective September 1st, 2021. These grants will yield approximately 310 registered apprentices. Breaking news, as of Tuesday, September 21st, this week, the commission approved another grant opportunity for information and technology for another request of application anticipated to be released early 2022, which will hopefully yield another 400 apprentices. An initiative also directed at pre-apprenticeship using IKEA donated dollars. Awards are anticipated later this year. Additionally, there is currently funding opportunity open that will be closing October the 15th to support new programs and apprentices. So we do have some money out on the street for those that are interested in doing this activity. If you are not already receiving our quarterly newsletter, please reach out to Apprenticeship Texas at twc.texas.gov to get on the distribution list. Our next release is scheduled during National Apprenticeship Week, November 15th through the 20th. That's my close and basic statements. Next is the session part that's beyond traditional apprenticeship. This session was coordinated with Crosby Brito, project manager with Workforce Solutions Gulf Coast. He has been a cornerstone in the expansion of apprenticeship and is a great resource to workforce partners, especially employers in need of workforce services. This session has been developed to give an overview of registered apprenticeship in Gulf Coast as a whole, and then a detailed discussion on the non-traditional occupation, specifically childcare. So again, please help me welcome Crosby and his panelists to continue our discussion on beyond traditional apprenticeship.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us in this session. As most of you know, if you've gone to the stores, if you've gone clothes shopping, and now we're going into the holidays, the stores are not what they used to be. And we can blame COVID all we want, but the truth of the matter is that this was an issue that has been happening for years now, where you have a shortage of workers. You go into the stores and sometimes you don't see Lunchables if you have little kids. There's certain brand clothes and certain brand materials that you're not seeing. Obviously, COVID has a great impact in the shipment and the production of a lot of materials. But the truth of the matter is that we've had a shortage of workers in many industries. Construction and crafts, notoriously, they've always told us that there's a shortage of workers. There's not that same interest in going into the trades. Medical has seen a shortage. Hospitality and retail, we see that there's a shortage. And it could be for different reasons, whether people are not interested in working in that arena, maybe the qualifications, maybe people are not going to school for certain credentials. But one field and one occupation that has not got the attention or the notoriety that others have has been our early child development. And we have two pioneers with us today that are going to talk to us about their story, what they did. And we hope that this is an inspiration for you, whether you're an employer, whether you're a nonprofit organization, whether you're a community college or a technical school. We could all relate that sometimes you feel like you don't fit into something. And when we hear apprenticeships, we're hearing about traditional occupations. We hear again about the trades. We hear about what everybody else is doing, and you kind of feel left out because you're like, well, I don't apply to none of those, so this probably does not apply to me. But the truth is that if you're in need a certain skill set, if you're in need of certain credentials, if you're in need of certain workers, if you're in need of certain traits that are not coming out because there's maybe no programs in your local community colleges, or maybe the curriculum is not matching what your industry and what your occupation is demanding, then apprenticeship is for you. And it doesn't matter what type of occupation or industry you're in. What we want to relay today, we don't want to talk about numbers, and we're not going to, floor you with everything that's been accomplished. And there will be time where we share a little bit of success stories. But more importantly, we want to share today is that we're breaking down barriers. And now is a time that you can develop a program regardless of the occupation and the industry you're in. We encourage you to work with your nearest workforce board. We encourage you to work with the Office of Apprenticeship. And the pioneers that we're going to speak with today, one located in Houston, Bright Offerings in the Sugar Land area, and the other Campfire, who's located in the Fort Worth area. Completely two different, sides of the state, yet they both experienced similar issues. And instead of waiting to see what else somebody else did about it, they took matters into their own hands and they did something about it. So with us today, we have Lynn Lucas from Campfire, and we have Noreen Nafani from Bright Offerings. Noreen, good morning. Lynn, good morning. Thank you for being here with us. I'm going to ask you just a couple things so the audience can learn a little bit more about you, and hope that through today's conversations, we inspire them for them to say, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I can do this. This does apply to me. And even if I'm not traditional, this is something that I need. So Noreen and Lynn, thanks again. Noreen, if you can tell us a little bit about Bright Offerings, tell us where you're located and a little bit about what you do, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite. So my name is Noreen Nathani, and I'm the Vice Chair for Bright Offerings, where we offer at the moment non-traditional apprenticeships. We cover tracks like information technology, accounting, but our flagship program, like Crosby mentioned, is the Early Childhood Specialist Program, which I lead. We're in Sugar Land, Texas, but we work with individuals all over Texas. Last year alone, we had about 100 apprentices that were interested in the program, and our goal is to be able to help them through the process. We continue to grow and add more non-traditional apprenticeship programs because we're passionate about providing support and education for part of the American workforce that is often overlooked. These days, the vast majority of workforce does not have a college education, and oftentimes they can't afford it. So we take pride in creating apprenticeship programs that provide practical training, hands-on experience, but most importantly, mentorship, so that the experienced professionals can pass down this knowledge and wisdom to up-and-coming generation of workers.
Great, thank you, Noreen. Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about Campfire, where you're located, and a little bit about what you do, please?
Yeah, thank you, Crosby. Also, thank you for the invite to be here today. We're quite excited to have the opportunity. And Noreen and I have had a great time to get to know each other too, and kind of share what's been happening in our programs. But I'm with Campfire First, Texas. We are located in Fort Worth. We've been here for about 106 years, initially doing outdoor education, traditional camping, youth development, after-school programs, teen programs, that kind of thing. And then about 25 plus years ago, we noted an issue with the quality of professional development. And this is just thinking about the childcare hours that were required for licensing. And so we began an early childhood development department at that time. We currently offer seminars and courses, certifications that are directed at early childhood directors and teachers. And we also have an intense professional development course that includes on-site mentoring, progress monitoring, milestone recognitions, and evaluation. And so it was out of that program that we've actually run for the past 15 years that we developed the apprenticeship program as it stands today. And so, and I'll just close that question by saying that Noreen and I noticed yesterday, I appreciate you talking about the similarities and the differences and the issues in the industry. It's such an important part of what's happening. And so we've enjoyed being able to talk about those things and share. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lynn. And a lot of the people here in the audience, and myself included, we've identified, and we've been here for a couple of years, we need to start preparing workers of tomorrow very early on. Let's start engaging those in junior high. Let's start engaging those in high school in their early 16s, 17s. Let's introduce them to careers that maybe they're not aware of. We know that parents and adults play a huge influence. Growing up, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer. That's all you hear because that's the sexy term. You two took it a step further, and you are developing children at the age of 2, 3, 4, 5. You're providing fundamental skills and lessons that they're going to develop. And you know a lot better than I do, but there is studies and there is data out there that whatever children learn between the ages of about 3 and 7 is probably the most important time frame for a children to develop and who they're going to be, or the character that they're going to develop as they grow up. So this session is about apprenticeships, and what we want to know from you, Noreen, and then I'll ask you, Lynn, is why did you develop a retro apprenticeship program? Tell us your story. For those who are listening that are in industries and occupations that are not traditional here today, or those who are in colleges, those maybe community organizations who are working with individuals with demographics that maybe don't identify with college or may struggle to find that career path. Tell us your story and why you said, I need a registered apprenticeship program. Noreen, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thank you. So some of the pain points are very similar to what Lynn mentioned, the quality, the need for workers, but in particular for our Bright Offering story. About 8 years ago, I was presenting an early childhood training, and a teacher came to me and said, can I have a payment plan for $120 training, which she needed in order to get a secure job next day? At first, I was quite surprised, but then I quickly realized that her problem is pretty common actually. As a society, we just say, oh, you need to work, go out and get a job. But we don't consider seemingly little things that create huge barriers in securing a position and continuing to work. 40% of Americans actually can't handle an unexpected expense of $400 these days, and we expect them to invest in education. So my encounter with this intelligent, motivated teacher who just couldn't afford $120 really sparked something within me. Now within our organization, we help our students get training, mentorship they need at no cost to them, thanks to programs like the apprenticeship program, our affiliation with our local workforce and Department of Labor. There's two types of knowledge, right? There's explicit knowledge and the tacit knowledge. And I feel like sometimes we just focus on this explicit knowledge so much and we excel at it. But when it comes time to really talk about the tacit knowledge, we can't, or we don't have the ability to have that. And that is the knowledge that is experience. That is the knowledge that's context. That's the knowledge that's practice. And I feel like the apprenticeship model applied towards that helps you bring those two knowledges together. And that's why we applied it to early childhood specialists and other programs to create a path for individuals who want to grow and who want to get into careers and have the barriers of education or finance to really create successful careers. And that's how we began Bright Offerings.
Great, thank you, Noreen. And yeah, you're embodying exactly what retro apprenticeship is and what the commissioner usually tells us every time we have a conference or we have a meeting. It's you're earning while you're learning. And for those who may not be familiar with your apprenticeship, you're in school, you're learning, you're gaining a credential, but you're employed all at the same time. And that's a big difference because you're able to earn a paycheck, as Noreen is saying, but you're also earning a degree, you're earning that credential, you're earning those certificates for you to be able to excel in your career. Thank you for that, Noreen. Lynn, tell us a little bit about your story. What made you and Campfire First say, we need a registered apprenticeship program?
Oh, so many things. There's so many issues in early education. So specifically in our local community in Tarrant County, but it's not, we know because of all the research that you mentioned before, it's not just a local issue, it is a national issue that we have. There's some big issues, and then there's some specific kind of a backstory. So the big issues, one has to do with quality of service. So there is a lack of quality childcare. We have a quality childcare shortage crisis. I mean, we really do. And this is really important. And I do want to share why, because it helps you understand the reason that we needed to start the apprenticeship. Brain growth and development for young children, 85% of brain growth happens by age 3. By age 3. 90% of brain growth and development happens by age 5. And so all of that is happening before children are even in kindergarten. And so there's an impact when that doesn't happen, when you don't have quality care. So locally, we had an issue in our local ISD systems, realizing, okay, our third graders, our dropout rate is higher than we want it to be. Our scores are struggling. Our third graders aren't reading at grade level. And at the point we were looking at the apprenticeship, the local were third grade reading at grade level was less than 40%. Also, third grade reading level is a predictor of future success. And this includes everything from high school graduation to being in the criminal justice system to needing social services, resources, et cetera, versus being able to pay taxes and contribute to the community in positive ways. So the return on investment in early education is very high. We know based on research that for every dollar you spend, there's at least a $7 return on that investment. It is huge. It's expensive, that's first, but the payoff is worth it. So you can see how this would affect our future workforce. So this is really important for our local community. It's an economic issue, not only because of the future workforce, but because people who are working need quality childcare. We are seeing that now more than ever. We notice that childcare centers don't even have classrooms open because they don't have teachers. Why do teachers not want to work? Well, there's this whole system behind it that really needs to be shored up, and apprentices is a part of that. There's an equity issue when it comes to early education, like so many other industries, but there's an opportunity gap for women of color not having the same opportunities to be able to make their way along the career and educational pathway. So that's why it was important. Now, interestingly, Campfire have been running the intense professional development program that I mentioned. We have been running that for at least 10 years. That's called School Readiness. We had a partnership with Fort Worth ISD because we wanted to impact kindergarten readiness scores, because that's a predictor of third grade reading, et cetera, et cetera. And so we targeted childcare centers near Fort Worth ISD in order to try to impact those scores. Long story short, year after year after year, when we look at the kindergarten readiness scores of children who go into Fort Worth ISD that were supported by the Campfire program, with a demographically similar group that is in the same school, year after year, the Campfire cohort performed better to a statistically significant degree. And so here's the thing, we had all that happening and we could see that it was being effective. The program was effective. However, there was absolutely no formal recognition of that for the teachers involved, none. So then there was a big push with national standards that early childhood teachers need to have bachelor's degrees. And when that happened, many teachers in the communities that we serve were it was not realistic. It wasn't realistic to be able to get teachers to have bachelor's degrees for so many reasons. That's probably a whole other conversation. And so we realized as a community, we needed to do something to solve that issue and to help teachers who are already out in the field be able to elevate along their own educational pathway. So we did a survey of the community. 50% of people that answered the survey said they're very interested in knowing what the career pathway is and having the opportunity to work along it. They told us what the challenges were. And when we thought about how can we solve, what's a potential answer to these problems, it was apprenticeship. Even though there were no apprenticeships for early education in the state of Texas, we didn't know what we were doing. And so we were extraordinarily needy from everybody with the Department of Labor and TWC to help us manage the system and the program, but it was not as hard as we thought it would be. So we specifically worked with community partners that included the Workforce Solutions of Tarrant County, Tarrant County College, Tarleton State University, and Texas Association for the Education of Young Children's TEACH program, created an early education pathway and program that would fill a gap that we saw. Because of the goals that we were trying to reach, we purposefully created a program that would not only land somebody with a solid, standalone, non-expiring, recognized certificate that was also a conduit to an AA or BA degree with our local colleges and universities. So that was kind of a long answer, but I felt like it was really important to give you all that information. Also, I can't resist ever getting to talk about how important early education is.
No, that is relevant. And I think a lot of those in attendance today can relate. Again, whether you're an employer, whether you're a school or an organization, a lot of people work in the field that they did not go to school in. And we have a lot to show for. I'm one of them. I went to school for the medical field and I'm here, doing this, which is completely separate. And we learn a lot along the way, but it would have been nice that throughout those hours that you've invested and all the years worked, there's a certificate, there's something that you can show to say, this is what I've done while I've been working. And you've given that to the teachers, and Noreen has been able to give that to the Montessoris and to the teachers. That by working and by investing that time, there's something to show for it. And that's something that apprenticeship does. It's beyond just training somebody and showing them how to do the work. It's having something obtainable in their hand, certificate. Not only did you get a paycheck, but you also got either degree, college credits, or a certificate. How cool is that for you to work and also still get that educational factor? So moving along to other questions, and I want the rest of the audience to relate to this and see if this is affecting them. Very general discussion, but I'm going to kind of pick on that a little bit. But Noreen, I want to hear from you on, you hold a consortium there in Houston where you're the registered apprenticeship sponsor, and there's several schools, 20, maybe 30 different schools and education centers that you work with. What did they tell you? What did employers tell you about the workforce? Their challenges? Was the curriculum not aligned? When people graduated from school in this field, were they ready to work? Or did you see that something was missing and that's why the apprenticeship program was needed to kind of come in and pick up where school left off? Can you talk to us? I know it's a loaded question, but tell us about those workforce challenges that you've encountered as a registered apprenticeship sponsor.
So I want to share the perspective of employers, right? Because I think that's where the pain point is, especially since the pandemic. The pain point is we don't have enough workers, like Lynn mentioned. People have to close their classrooms. People have to close 6 lanes in a shopping center because they don't have enough workers, right? But the other problem is the quality of workers too, which is a huge problem that has been there, but I think it has kind of come to surface at this point in the last year or so. And a lot of employers are baffled because they feel that they have to handhold the new hires quite a bit. Why? Because people have been trained purely to attain the explicit knowledge. And I keep going back to this explicit knowledge versus tacit knowledge, because that's what's needed for workers to be able to come into work, be confident, take on the role, take on the position, and know what they're doing, right? But lots of employers have come to us and said, hey, when we hire someone that has met the educational requirement, they don't have the practical knowledge to function independently and confidently in their positions. And it's a big struggle for them. Some, but very few employers are trying to solve this problem by creating their own internal mentoring program. But there's so many problems attached to that also, right? Because it takes valuable time away from higher paid or higher level workers. Employers are not professional trainers. Lynn and I were talking about this yesterday. Not all managers are going to be good mentors or trainers. Not everyone has the ability to transfer knowledge like we expect them to. So they're just winging it, and it creates more conflict. Sometimes good managers, good workers leave because now they have this new task that they never know how to do. And then the other problem is that they're trying to solve a problem that should be solved by the education programs, right? Before people are hired, so that when I hire someone or when you hire someone, you are confident that this person within a week or so is going to be a good producing employee, right? But those things are not happening. That's why we happily work with both employers and training organizations and community colleges to build custom apprenticeship programs to meet their needs, so that they don't have to figure it out on their own. And they have programs created by professional educators and trainers that help build that gap to create successful careers for employees.
That was very, very detailed. Thank you. Lynn, what is your perspective on the challenges that you experienced in Fort Worth? Was it more on the employer side? Was it the students? How Noreen had mentioned that they weren't fully prepared to embark on this new journey, so to speak, when it comes to child development. What challenges did you see that made you, again, go back and say, we need to reinforce this and we need to implement a richer apprenticeship program?
Yeah, I love everything that you just said, Noreen, and I definitely echo all of that. It's something that's important to mention, I think, is that both Noreen and I have served directly, like we have been direct early education providers. I've been a taller teacher, I've been a pre-K teacher, I've been a director and regional director and trainer, and we both have done all kinds of, so we have been like in the mess, and sometimes it is very messy. And so we have personally also experienced some of the problems in the field. And so we really identify with these. And we continue though to hear the same song, second verse, I guess, that we have a quality early education professional shortage, that people have a hard time finding quality staff. Locally, what we heard is people who are trying to reach the higher standards of accreditation, even if they're really good programs, they didn't qualify because their teachers didn't have the AA or BA degree. Now, because some of the teachers, you have these two things happening. You have the teachers who are everything that Noreen just said. I just echo it. I don't need to repeat what she just said. Every single thing she just said about people not being qualified. And on the other side of the coin, you have people who actually are qualified out in the field because they are engaged with programs. And I'll just say like Campfire and like Bright Offerings. And there may be many others out there that are quality. I'm sure there are. And those teachers and those centers are doing great. and yet they wouldn't qualify for the higher standards. This is important for so many reasons, and it links a little bit to the economy of a childcare program, but that's not the question, so I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there right now. There's also what we kept hearing locally was a true, and nationally too, this tug of war, this absolute tug of war between people in the early education industry. And the tug of war was, you really need a BA degree, and you really don't need a BA degree. You really need to respect the 25 years worth of teaching that I've done in the pre-K classroom. You know, there's this tug of war. And as we consider this locally, and this was a part of the work that we did with our partners, including the workforce, including the colleges, including the Texas AUIC, we realized that what we had to do was to create something for our community where there would be many ways to win. And we realized that there are valid points to both arguments. It is important to understand child development, and there's a lot of advantages if you're able to make it through school. And most of our early educators in this community, they don't make enough to go to school. They don't have the support to get there. They may, if they have the opportunity, perhaps, but there's also value in the experience that they've had, if it was quality experience. So we wanted to figure out how to do both of those, and that was what we heard a lot. The experience, the experiential part of the experience that Noreen is talking about is huge. And there is a lot of research that tells us that there's a big difference in change in teacher behavior if they have that on-site mentoring. And if we have to choose, if Campfire had to choose, okay, we can either go into this classroom for an hour, you know, and directly be in there, or we can offer this one-off seminar. It's not the one-off seminar that's going to make the most change, more than likely, if there's not follow-up. Other specific challenges that we noticed included retention of staff, staff feeling like there's not any place for me to move. I don't want to be a taller teacher, you know, until I'm 65, and so I'm going to go do something else. One of the most important pieces of feedback, and this wasn't on our goal sheet, but when we heard back from apprentices, we just completed our first year. We have four graduates. Our graduation is happening next week, so we're excited about that. The apprentices reported to us on a survey, they feel so much more valued. They feel the value of their work. And I cannot, it even makes me, I can feel just my heart, you know, when I'm remembering reading the surveys and listening to that, because when someone feels valued and they're doing a work that's that important, that's a really important thing. And we need to do that better in our industry. So those are the things that we were hearing.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sure a lot of the audience can relate. There's several industries that there is a gap between when you graduate and when you're actually ready to work. So thank you both for sharing that information. We're getting close to the end of our segment. So I do want to focus these last couple minutes on the how. I think the audience now have been able to relate that although they may not be in the same industry and they may not do the same type of work, they're definitely experiencing the same challenges, whether it's a retention, whether it's the training factor, it's the readiness from those graduates that are applying for work, or it's just finding the talent that is willing and able to do the work that they need for their occupation or their industry. So Noreen, I'm going to start with you and let's talk about how. A lot of people don't know or realize when it comes to registered apprenticeship, there are boilerplates, and that means that there are templates. So for you in attendance who are thinking about developing a registered apprenticeship program, you're not developing something from scratch. You're not being asked to put on a hat of a college and now build your own curriculum of 4 years or 2 years and go on about it by yourself and then call us when you're ready. There are templates already built based on different related occupations, SOC codes, NICS codes. So whether you're working with the Department of Labor or you're working with the Office of Apprenticeship, They will help you identify which one is the most relatable industry soft code template that's already there. And you build from it and you customize it. You make it your own. You're going to train them your way on what is relevant to you. So with that said, knowing that there's a template, knowing that there's a starting point that you can create, Noreen, if you can kind of pick up from there and tell us, how did you create the registered apprenticeship? How did you come up with the curriculum? And maybe if you can talk to us about it on how long did it take you from beginning to end?
Okay, great question, because you're right. There's, this is relevant to other industries also. And like Lynn mentioned, we both have experience in early childhood. And so it was just to put the pieces together, compare it with the template that we had, and kind of put it together and move forward from there. But we put a lot of things in place in order to go from what we had and what it needed to be. And the first was the financial aspect of it, right? So we want to do our best to find ways to make sure that apprenticeships are accessible to all people. And it's not just like one segment or one area or so on and so forth. And next is obviously the practical, right? The boots on the ground, so to speak. And to build the curriculum, we did a lot of research, and we did a lot of hard work to ensure that the program we're putting together is something that's needed in the society, in our community specifically, and it's going to be beneficial. In building the curriculum, we do our best to identify like key areas where the tacit knowledge gaps are there, so that we can really fill those gaps and create a program that is going to be successful. We talked to recent hired workers, we spoke to supervisors, we talked to employers, and then we set milestones according to their experience and the feedback that we got. And lastly, our curriculum focuses on mentorship. I feel like Lynn mentioned, if she had a choice between a lecture and a mentorship or a follow-up, she would do mentorship. And we're finding out that the mentorship is the key. We know so many individuals in our lives who are brilliant, who are hardworking, who want to do big things, but they start some. That's where the mentorship kind of kicks in, right? When you have a mentor, they make sure that the mentors have the tools and the training to support these apprentices. Of course, curriculum building is a very nuanced conversation, and I don't think that we have the time for it today, right now, but I'd be happy to connect with anyone who is interested in just, how do you put it together? How do you connect it with the Department of Labor guidelines? And the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. So, I would love to connect and share what we have done so you can get there faster and more efficiently. And perhaps I can take a few tidbits from what you do successfully. But I'm happy to have that conversation. I do want to close this question by saying that the three pillars that we put together, the finance, the availability of the curriculum, plus the mentorship, it creates a well-rounded curriculum, and it truly supports the employers, mentors, and apprentices. So it becomes like this triangle that supports each other. And it's like a cycle that continues to help our economy. So it's very important to have all three perspectives. Now, for you in a different organization or a different career, it could look different. So you have to see what are your pillars and just kind of start from there.
That's a very good point. How long would you think it took? I know you did a lot of research. So if you remove the research part, how much time did you think you invested in from beginning to end?
So I've been a trainer for 12 years. So some of the knowledge was existing, just like Lynn mentioned, they had an existing program. So I had an existing program. So it was not very difficult for me to transfer that over. So I'm going to say maybe 8 months to a year to really try out the program and implement it correctly.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. How about you? How long did it take you for you to develop the curriculum? Were the boilerplates a great starting point for you? Did you have to customize them? And how long did it take you for you to get registered and afterwards implement and start your first apprenticeship cohort?
Well, like Noreen, we were able to implement a program that was already running. And we had this research, already. We had all this data. We already had progress monitoring. We already knew it was effective, both in the child care center and as we follow children through Fort Worth ISD because of that partnership. And so, so we were really lucky when it came to that. We did create a business plan. And so a part of that was doing a needs of the community to figure out if this was manageable, particularly in terms of being able to pay for it. Because we knew we wanted college credit, we reached out, and this took a while, developing the relationship between Tarrant County. Well, we already had a relationship with Tarrant County College and with Charleston State University, but it took a while to learn about that particular system. But now when students graduate, they're eligible for up to 33 hours of college credit. And so it was worth that for us because of our goals. Then when people ask me, so that has to do with all the curriculum. When people ask me they ask me the question, how was it with the registered apprenticeship program? I always say, it was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. It was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. And I have to say, we were scared about that part because we thought, oh my gosh, big bureaucracy. We don't know any of these people. It's outside of childcare to a degree, although the childcare people were very helpful. Conference call with him. I don't know. I've been curious if you remember that, Dudley, but we were, and all the people. And so then we were able to talk with Desi, we had a call with Desi, with Kelly, who's a regional person. Reagan talked with us. Tara talked to, there's so many people that were helpful, and they pointed us to things like all of those templates. And we cannot, it really is. We downloaded the template, we filled it out. As we had questions, we asked. We sat on the phone with people who could help us. And I just cannot say how helpful this system has been and how easy that was. And as we've wanted to add occupations, we have a meeting. We had a meeting recently with Tara to talk about that. And we're gonna take next steps on that. So in terms of how long it took, we started the business plan in 2018. And our first cohort of apprentices started in August of 2020. Our first graduates happened in August of 2021. So that's what the timeline looked like for us.
Great. Thank you. And as we close, I think one thing that sometimes is not mentioned, and both of your curriculums and your apprenticeship programs offer, is that registered apprenticeship programs are not the end. It is not I have a degree, I have a certificate, I have my college credits, I have my career path. It is a beginning, which means that it is transferable. Whenever you decide to create a registered apprenticeship program, the curriculum, you're deciding the career path and the different career trajectories that you can offer your employees. Just like most of us went to college and we decided that was not a career path for us, apprenticeship program offers flexibility and offers that transferable skill set that you can take. So all those months, years, hours invested in these programs and in these curriculums can be transferable. That is something that you're offering your employees and your apprentices that very little, if anybody, can offer, which is saying, you're not only working for me 1 or 2 years, you may not only just get a paycheck, you may not only get this registered apprenticeship program, but you're going to get this nationally recognized credential. But the skills that I've put into this curriculum will be accepted and recognized and appreciated by other occupations. And you won't just be able to say, or you won't limit it to say, well, all I know is this, because it's transferable. And I want to thank both of you for today's session, for today's time. It was focused on early child development. It is so important that we invest in tomorrow's workforce, but that does not mean high school, that does not mean middle school, We learned today that starts at the age of 3, 4, 5, 7 years old. But we hope that this is relatable to all you in attendance, whether it's early child development, whether it's construction, whether it's medical, whether it's hospitality, whether it's a customer service or a call center. You're probably going through the same issues. You're probably going through the same skills gaps. You're probably going through the same shortages. If you're unable to find the talent, if talent is not coming out for your local community colleges, work with your community colleges to identify the curriculum and to fill in those skills gaps. And we encourage you to seek out the Office of Apprenticeship, your local workforce boards, and together find the solution to this problem. So Noreen, Lynn, from all of us, we thank you. You are truly pioneers. If I'm not mistaken, you're the only 2 programs in the state of Texas that have an apprenticeship program. And we thank you for what you're doing for our children. We thank you for what you're doing for the workers of tomorrow. And we thank you for caring for the great shortage and for the great issues that we're experiencing as a state. Desi, I'll pass it on to you. Thank you, everybody, for your time this morning. And we hope that this session was beneficial to you.
Thank you, Crosby, Noreen, and Lynn, for a great discussion. Better than I could have hoped for. You really laid out how you went through the how and the why. It won't be the same for everybody on the line that wants to explore this further, but that's where you go first, how and why. And always reach out to your board. And I can't stress enough, reach out to us, apprenticeshiptexas@twc.state.tx.w. Whoops, wrong address. Apprenticeshiptexas@twc.texas.gov. We just changed addresses, and we'll help you with partnerships if you don't already have them. So moving on, last but not least, we have Reagan Miller, the Director of Child Care and Early Learning Division of Texas Workforce Commission. I'm thinking there's a significant number of the audience that have not met Ms. Miller as of yet. So I'll give a few more details about her than I have with our past speakers. Ms. Miller oversees services funded by the Federal Child Care and Development Block Grant. Ms. Miller oversees historic levels of federal investment into child care system made through COVID relief packages, with Texas receiving $5.5 billion, and that's a B, not an M, $5.5 billion to support these efforts in Texas. Ms. Miller was appointed to the Texas Early Learning Council in February 2020 and was named chair of this council by Governor Abbott in February 2021. I always say Texas is an overachiever. Reagan Miller contributes to Texas being an overachiever and has for years. Please help me welcome Ms. Miller to the discussion of childcare and apprenticeship.
Well, thank you very much, Desi. I'm happy to join all of you today and really appreciate the background that Crosby, Lynn, and Noreen provided. I'm going to talk a little more specifically about childcare. A lot of people wonder, childcare at a workforce agency, what's that all about? And I'll tell you, we're one of 4 states that put childcare in a workforce agency. And I think Lynn did a great job of really talking about how childcare is so directly tied to economic and workforce. Not only are we helping support working parents, but we're also growing our youngest learners and building the future workforce. It's a great match. And I think we're really fortunate to be sort of in the minority of states that have placed childcare at their workforce agency. So next slide. Goal of the child care program. I think most people are aware that we subsidize the cost of child care for low-income working parents. That's kind of the bread and butter of the program. But equally important is quality improvement and consumer education, making sure that parents are making informed choices about the child care that best meets their family's needs. And one of those key considerations is the quality of that child care program. Many of you may have heard of Texas Rising Star, which is a quality rating improvement system that child care providers can voluntarily participate in. And it's an indication that they're meeting higher quality standards above and beyond the basic health and safety standards that our partners at Child Care Regulation oversee. But also part of that quality improvement focus is supporting the professional development of our early learning teachers. And so that's what we're talking about today with registered apprenticeship. So next slide. So just to put a few things in context, we are the lead agency for the Child Care Development Block Grant. And you can see, I call this our regular allocation. This is the money that Congress has been appropriating for years. And you can see year over year, we've been seeing our money go up. And this is due to two things. One, Congress is just investing more into early education. But we also see incremental increases year over year because the number of kids that we have is increasing at a higher rate versus the rest of the nation. So even when funding stays relatively flat, we end up gaining because our relative proportion of young kids is going up. So you can see in fiscal year 21, our regular allocation is $866 million, which sounds like a lot until you go to the next screen. And as Desi mentioned, with all of these federal stimulus funds, Congress has made some very, very significant investments in childcare. And so the next slide will provide an overview of the funding that Texas has received, and this does total almost $6 billion, just under $6 billion. The CARES Act funding that came out right at the beginning of COVID, the SRSA funds, which went into play around December of last year, and then the ARPA, the ARPA funds that were just put in place. And those ARPA funds kind of came in two pots. You've got discretionary money, which the state can really determine what they want to spend it on. And then the stabilization funds, most of that money will go out in grants directly to childcare programs. So childcare programs themselves are going to have a lot more resources to help them address their operating costs, but may also be used as they're thinking about how to help upskill the staff that they have. You'll see a link at the bottom. We post all of this information on our website. And so on the next slide, you'll see we've also outlined what are our goals with this enormous increase in one-time money. This $5.9 billion is one-time money. And so some of the things that we're thinking about are, how do you serve more low-income children with childcare subsidies, helping to stabilize the childcare industry itself through those grants that go directly out to childcare programs, improving the quality of childcare. And then on the next slide, you'll see supporting the childcare workforce through professional development, scholarships, training, business coaching, and then finally building the capacity of childcare, including apprenticeship program expansion. And so on the next slide, this is what I want to highlight today. June 29th, TWC's commissioners, Desi mentioned all of their names before, they approved some of this new funding specifically for the development of new early childhood apprenticeship programs. I do want to say that because we're in an active procurement, I can only discuss the elements that were approved in the publicly posted document. You'll see a link to that document at the bottom of the page. But what I can tell you that came before the commission, we're interested in investing in the actual development of the program because, as Crosby mentioned, there are only 2 registered apprenticeship programs for early childhood, and you just heard from both of them. Lynn mentioned the Texas Association for the Education of Young Children and a program that they have called TEACH. This is actually a program that TWC funds that provides scholarships to early learning teachers. And we recently expanded the types of scholarships that can be provided to not only cover AAs, BAs, but also registered apprenticeship programs. So we do have funding out to help support some of those classroom training costs, but unfortunately, right now we only have 2 programs in the entire state. So what the commission approved was funding specifically to help with the development of the new program. We know it takes time and effort to actually get the program in place. And so these funds, as noted on this paper, can help with building and managing a coalition of childcare businesses and educational institutions, program development to become a registered apprenticeship program through the Department of Labor. It could include securing existing curriculum or new curriculum development, coordinating of training and mentors, which is something that Noreen mentioned was a focus for them, that mentoring component. And really thinking about sustainability plans for how the program can be supported once the grant funds end. There certainly are other resources that are available that both of these programs are considering. Once the program is developed, how are you going to continue its operation year over year? So we have this money out. We should be publishing a competitive procurement solicitation in the near future. If there are specific questions about that, we'll have to wait until that procurement is issued and it goes through that formal process. But you can certainly look at the information that's posted on our website for any additional detail about what has been approved to date. I think we're very fortunate that there are 2 programs in Texas that can serve as models for folks who are really interested in meeting the needs of the early childhood workforce. And so I appreciate kind of closing this discussion on early childhood apprenticeship. And Desi, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Reagan, for joining us. I'm sure our audience definitely has something to think about and look forward to. Based on your presentation, I say let's build some exceptional childcare apprenticeship programs. Nobody leave yet. We're announcing the 6th annual Apprenticeship Texas Conference in McAllen, September 22nd and 23rd. To save the date, there it is. We hope that you will join us and bring other workforce partners with you. Also, on the next slide, please take our survey. We've tried to make it easy for you by providing a QR code on the screen so you can use your smartphone and submit your survey as we're closing out this session. Please join us this afternoon for our 2nd session at 2 p.m. If you haven't already registered, the registration button is still open at theapprenticeshiptexas.com. Lastly, if you were registered for this session, as I mentioned before, we'll be posting the recording and the PowerPoint and the Q&A on theapprenticeshiptexas.com, and you'll receive notification of this. So once again, thank you for joining us. I do hope that we provided you some thought-provoking information, and we'll continue to expand registered apprenticeship in Texas. Thank you.